Imagine spending your entire life believing someone is your biological father, but in fact, the man who fathered you has several kids because of his medical work. That's exactly what happened to a woman in Michigan. A couple of years ago, she found out the man she called dad wasn't her biological father.
My mom and dad, they were married and tried for 8 years to have children.
Jamie Hull's parents tried to have kids for years with no luck, so her mother decided to see a fertility specialist.
My mother was told that if she went to this doctor, that she had heard that he was helping women that were unable to have children.
That doctor was Dr. Philip Peven, who was her mom's gynecologist in the 1950s. Jamie says he abused his power as a doctor for years.
Which is such a break of trust, a break of everything that you can think of ethically.
Hall never thought anything of her upbringing, but turns out her father was keeping a secret from her. She was a product of artificial insemination.
My sister and I were like, that's kind of unbelievable that she would say that. So we went to my mother, of course, and my mother was just appalled. And she just said, why would she say something awful like that? Why would she do that? And I'm like, I don't know. Is it true? And she's like, of course not.
Hall needed answers and opted for a paternity test.
And they both came back 100% that he wasn't our biological father.
Then she went back to her mom for more answers.
She said, okay, well, I went to this doctor, and this doctor told me that, your dad had slow swimmers and that there's a procedure that could help. And this procedure involved, she said, with maybe donating a sperm from somebody, and that if they did those together, that it could help your dad.
The procedure worked, and Hall's mom got pregnant.
I look up this doctor that was helping my mother, supposedly. Now, he's a doctor, and at the time he was helping a lot of women.
Hall decided to do a DNA test and was immediately alarmed at the results.
I'm seeing half siblings, and I'm seeing just a bunch of things on there that I didn't understand. But there was one name that was managing one of the accounts, and it was the only name that I recognized. And as soon as I saw it, it said Peven, and it was as a manager. And I just looked up at my husband. I said, I know who my biological father is.
After she got over the initial shock, she visited Dr. Peven in person. He's 105 years old, living in Southfield. Surprisingly, she says she doesn't hold a grudge.
So I said, well, we want to thank you for delivering us. And we also want to thank you because I understand that, you also fathered us. And it was a long silence. And he said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, my mom was not able to have children with my father. And according to everything that I've done and with DNA testing, you're my biological father.
Peven even owned up to throwing away the sperm her parents provided for the fertility procedure.
He said, well, because I needed to know that it was viable. He said, and, there was timing on these things and cycles. And so I just needed to know that it was viable.
In the 1950s, anonymous sperm donations were allowed. Now, that's not the case. Hall reached out to a national nonprofit called Right to Know. It helps people who made recent discoveries with their genetics by providing education, mental health resources, and legal help.
We started working in Michigan because of Dr. Peven's and because of Jamie, who is the product of Dr. Peven's. We worked with her to go ahead and her representative, Representative Roth, to propose legislation to make broad-based fertility fraud a crime. There's no crime broken when a man, without permission of his patient, a doctor, uses his own sperm and inserts it into his patient and creates a child from that.
Kara Rubenstein-Dyerin is the co-founder of Right to Know. She helped write a few bills which are still being reviewed. What they said is,
number one, to include broad-based fraud. The second important aspect is to make sure that there's a sufficient statute of limitations.
For Hall, this entire journey has been a roller coaster.
I've always been raised that, who you are is not necessarily determined by your DNA, the person you are, the way you treat other people. And, but having his DNA, it's a whole new thing. You look in the mirror, you say, man, I wonder, do I look like his mom.
The package of bills is on its way to the Michigan House Judiciary Committee for review. If you would like to learn more, then head to the article below. Here for you in studio, Samana Sheikh, 6 News.